Yeah, I feel like you've got to give him a contract at a lower weight on purpose.
Yeah.
So that when he shows up overweight, maybe he'll be on weight.
But you know what? That's the only thing that they seem to love more than other things is the money.
If this guy loses, he's gonna fall. The wheels are gonna fall off the wagon on this guy. The show goes on. I'm not leaving.
Yes, people. I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxer podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Turmeric Co. The Turmeric Co. creates great tasting turmeric shots that harness the power of natural ingredients to support individuals on their wellness journey, offering anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, energy and immunity booster benefits. Welcome back to Mouthpiece. I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi.
This episode is brought to you by the Turmeric Co. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Give us questions, all of that. Send us your videos, your training videos. Let us know what you've been up to. And last week's best question was, love the show, guys. I've recently fallen in love with boxing and I've become a modern day fanatic, but I struggle with boxing history. Can you tell me some of your favorite boxers from years and years ago? So pre-Ali era.
Pre-Ali era?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my favorite guy pre-Ali era is probably going to be Willie Pep.
Okay.
Real tactical guy, good boxer. I felt like he was ahead of his time. I also like Nicolino Loche, made in the same mold. As far as exciting guys and guys that are, not to say that those guys weren't exciting, but they're more technical. As far as bangers, Jake LaMotta comes to mind. Also one of my favorite movies, Raging Bull, is about his life. And Jake LaMotta had quite a wild career and a wild, tumultuous life as well. Obviously,
is that a good film? Is that a good film, Paulie? I've got this thing with boxing films where sometimes I'm a bit put off by them because I don't feel like they're accurate enough.
I mean, listen, I don't think they're always fully accurate. But I think it focused on his second wife, his tumultuous life with his second wife. I mean, Jake LaMotta was married 6 or 7 times, but it gives credence to his tumultuous life, and he had a second wife during the prime of his career, there's things that went from there. I love it. I love it because it also has Italian American culture back in the 40s and 50s where it was just chock full of. The culture was doing really well in New York in those days, and it was, there was obviously the boxing had the ethnic rivalries, and it sold a lot of tickets, and people were all coming to the arenas and the stadiums. I think it was a good time to be a boxer. I think in those times in America, boxing and baseball were probably the 2 biggest sports. So if you were a world champion boxer, you really were a very, very known entity. So I think Jake lived a tumultuous life, but he lived a life that a lot of us would like, a life that a lot of us will look back on. He lived 96 years as well, so he definitely had his ups
I'm gonna
and downs.
cheat here. I'm gonna go with Sugar Ray Robinson. Go and watch all of his fights. It was like he fought every week. To be fair.
There's like 6 fights with Jake LaMotta, and he beat him 5 times.
Exactly. Like these guys, because there weren't 18 divisions and there weren't 120 world champions. They just fought each other every week. And they literally would do it like 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah, and sometimes they just couldn't get guys to fight them. So they just fight each other again and again and again. I think that was the case ended up happening with Jake and Ray Robinson. They just wanted to fight. I mean, Jake finally beats Ray. And then 3 weeks later, they rematch. He doesn't even get to enjoy the win. Ray beats him 3 weeks later. So,
that's the thing. It
hasn't even sunk in yet.
Do you know what? One thing I've always wondered, though, Paulie, is it more difficult then or now in order to almost rule an era? So, for example, if you are a Sugar Ray back then, you've got a small pool to select from in terms of your opponents, but you have to fight them quite regularly. Whereas here, you have careers that span, decades, but you've got to fight kind of sometimes the next wave of fighters, and the one after that. Is that harder?
I don't know. You see, I can only go by the experiences I had. I wouldn't know what it's like to have fought in those days. But I'll tell you what, you have pros and cons to both. For example, me with a guy with a lot of hand problems, I don't think the surgeries that fixed my hands would have been available to me back then. So I would have probably not been able to have a career. If once I started having hand problems. But I think a lot of things were different back then. I mean, guys were fighting so often. Maybe they weren't sparring as much. They weren't. I don't know. You know, because guys were fighting very, very often. So often that it's really inconceivable to think about guys fighting that often today. Top guys fighting that often today. So in that regard, it was more difficult. Today, you have a lot more performance-enhancing drugs. Today you have the Eastern Europeans. There was no Soviet fighters back then, you know, and the Eastern Bloc was not allowed to turn pro, so you got none of those guys, you know. Now you have to deal with that side of the world as well if you're a professional boxer. So again, I guess it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You'll probably never have a correct answer, but there's a lot of fun fighters pre-Ali era, you know. Those are just a few that come to mind. But there's more. You know, the Willie Pep Sandy Sadler rivalry was really amazing. If going back to the letter we got from that fan, you know, if you look into that Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler rivalry, that was one of the best in boxing as well. You know, you've got even the eras even before that. We have the Joe Louis era, and you know, he made all those title defenses. Billy Khan. You know, there's if you can get footage, it's hard to always get the footage. I don't always see the footage, but those fights exist. I think there's a lot to be taken from those times, nonetheless. There are historians that just tell you, oh, those guys were just better, and that's it. I personally don't think so, but I do think there's a lot to be learned from that era as well, and it laid the building blocks for the era of today.
Let's get into the weekend review. Inoue had an amazing win against Dasmarinas. What do you make of it? It was a sickening. It was a horrible body shot.
Everybody talks about Inoue's punching power, but this guy just kept getting knockdowns with body shots. You know? So it's like, you talk about punching power, you think about headshots, but he just kept. He got the stoppage, he got the knockdowns and the stoppage, all with body shots. So Inoue is a special kind of dangerous, and that's not the first time I see him do that. I saw him do that in the World Boxing Super Series against the Puerto Rican kid. I forgot his name. He's a good fighter. He actually, I remember he won this Puerto Rican kid won the world title against I think Paul Butler in England. He was on a Sky Sports card. I remember that I worked, and I remember being really impressed with him, really poised in a tough atmosphere in England, coming and winning the title. And he winds up in that World Boxing Super Series, and he catches Inoue, and Inoue stopped him with a body shot as well. You know, so Inoue, for all the punching power people talk about, Inoue is a wicked body puncher. Maybe it goes below the radar because he's not Mexican, and people usually think of that guys from that side of the world as being body punchers. But you know, it looks like in Asia they're teaching their fighters to throw to the body as well, because Inoue is a solid body puncher, and his boxing style is really complete to the head and body. So I look forward to continue to watch him. They're talking about him fighting Donaire again. Donaire is fighting Casemiro now. I don't know. I don't know if you know, Dan. I mean, I was kind of baffled by that, because I was under the impression Rigondeaux was fighting Casemiro.
That's what I thought.
And now all of a sudden it's all of a sudden it's Donaire, and so does Rigondeaux once again get the short end of the stick?
I think so. It seems like he always is. It feels like, but he's look. I don't really mind which one of those fight each other, as long as they all eventually do. I definitely don't want to see Rigondeaux left out in the cold. But
nobody likes to fight Rigondeaux.
They're
like, oh, he's too boring, but we can't beat him.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He's too effective, but
do you know what? He's beginning to show more flaws than ever before. I'm sure these fights are gonna start materializing. They usually wait. It's like waiting for a bus, and then all four just come along at once, kind of thing. So hopefully that does happen.
But you know, it's funny because Rigo, his best weight was 118 pounds, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's talking about Inoue. Why don't you make Inoue and Rigo? They're not going to.
I was just gonna do that
because Top Rank got rid of Rigo because he can't sell, right? So they're not gonna risk Rigo beating one of their main stars, you know. And that's not to say he'll definitely win, but I'm telling you, Rigondeaux
is close.
I remember shut down Donaire. Donaire was just won Fighter of the Year. He was the talk of the town, and Rigondeaux just took him and just made him put his hands in his pocket for 12 rounds. You know, so granted, it's not the Rigo of those prime years, but I still would be very interested in Inoue versus Rigo, and I know we're never going to find it because that's the one. This business is a scumbag business, but I love to see that.
I think the fans would we need it. Or maybe not many fans will even know who both of them are, but I personally need it. I think I need to see it. Because it will be a fascinating fight. You've got such a big, hard puncher.
I'll tell you, the key to open that door would have come with Rigo fighting Casemiro, because Casemiro is a really good fighter, but Rigo probably beats him, I think, you know, and Casemiro is a really good fighter. And so then it would kind of put Rigo back into the conversation. Because that bantamweight, let's face it, Rigo was a very, very difficult fighter at bantamweight. Much like Donaire. Donaire was much more difficult to beat at bantamweight, and that's why I feel like him and Inoue had such a great fight. But Rigo was another one. At bantamweight, you know, this is not an easy guy to beat. And even at his advanced age, you know, I would take a chance, but they won't. I know they won't. Because it's always business before sport, and they won't. And that's a shame.
Who was the biggest puncher you faced? I feel like I've probably asked you this, and I feel like you probably said Miguel Cotto.
The biggest puncher was Miguel Cotto that I faced. The biggest puncher I faced was Miguel Cotto. And he also was another guy who was good to the body. I remember about round 7, he hit me with a body shot, and I felt it hurt in that fight. And it wasn't one of those, sometimes those body shots aren't the ones that really dig in. Sometimes they're the ones that slice you like a knife. Yeah. You know, they just kind of slide across your stomach, and they give you this disgusting feeling. Yeah. Like, oh my God, that hurt, you know? So it was one of those where if you see the body shot, you wouldn't think it hurt me. But that's how I got hurt to the body with Cotto. And I think it was round 7. I'm pretty sure it was round 7. But it was a shot that sliced across my stomach. And it just, it was just, you know, I needed to recover. And Miguel didn't treat you good when you needed to recover, you know?
Also, Mikaela had a good win. How much do you rate her? Where do you think she is on a pound for pound list? What's next?
I don't know. You know, I thought she had a solid win. She looked good. She's a marketable fighter. You know, she's got a little bit of charisma. She's not a bad looking girl. She can fight. You know, she kind of ticks all the boxes. But I don't know. You know, I don't know. You know, it seems like these girls in boxing, they're jumping all kinds of different weights because, you know, they can't really find the opposition that's going to sell. Clarissa actually left the sport altogether and went down the ring, right? So I don't know. It's I wonder what the next move is for her.
I didn't even want to go into the MMA part of this, but we may as well just address it now. Boxing took an L this weekend. The L that Paulie, I think you presumed it was going to happen.
And I'm telling you, it was. And you know what's funny? People are going to probably say, oh, well, Paulie, you lost to Artem Lobov. I probably didn't lose to Artem Lobov. I got robbed. But also, I broke my hand, and it was a bare-knuckle boxing match.
Exactly.
And in the fight, I broke my hand.
It's a very different.
And it's not my fault we didn't use boxing judges, and so we use MMA judges. Because actually, one funny thing about that story, that the situation was, I found out it was going to be MMA judges in the dressing room because they were like, technically, this is not boxing. Technically, this is MMA. So, I mean, I still didn't think anybody could be that stupid, but nonetheless, you know, I fought a tactical fight with my broken hand, and it was what it was. But I always felt that legitimately, when I saw Anderson Silva and Chavez Jr. get made, legitimately, I thought Chavez Jr. would lose. Legitimately. And unfortunately, it's a black eye on boxing because boxing found a way. And this is always the guy that I point to. It's funny, if they can make him a world champion, a YouTuber can become world champion. It's dangerous. You know what I mean? The Chavez Jr. winning a world title is the epitome of why boxing is a business way before it's a sport. I mean, they found a way to maneuver things. They robbed like 5 or 6 guys on Chavez Jr.'s way up. Like there was about 5 or 6 fights he didn't even win on the way up. Robbing guys left and right, making sure he wins. Then I remember. You remember how he won the world title? I remember this. Sergio Martinez was a WBC middleweight champion. Yeah, I think he was WBO champion as well. And he was and he had a contract with HBO. So I'll give you people a little backstory. So Sergio had a contract with HBO. HBO, the WBC mandatory was Sebastian Zbik from Germany, and HBO had to okay all the opponents, you know, to put the fight on their network. HBO decided that Sebastian Zbik is not worthy to be on HBO, so they're not gonna buy Sergio Martinez versus Sebastian Zbik. So they put Sergio in a position where he's got to, you know, vacate the title, or WBC hopefully gives him a pass, you know. WBC is based in Mexico. They weren't going to give him a pass. Now with Chavez Jr. has a chance to fight for the vacant title with Zbik afterwards, you know. So Sergio has to vacate the WBC title, and they make Chavez Jr. and Zbik. And you know what happened? HBO buys the fight. HBO bought Chavez Jr. and Zbik.
It's Chavez Jr.
Politics reign supreme. Yeah, and so while they didn't let Sergio fight him on their network, they let Chavez Jr. fight him on their network. This is one of the reasons why HBO ended up running itself out of business, out of the boxing business. It was the things they were doing at the end was bordering on the ridiculous. So this guy wins the title over his Bick and becomes the champion. Wins a vacant title over his Bick, who was not that good at all, and becomes the WBC champion. So. Now you've got an ex-world champion, legitimate world champion against an MMA guy, and it was always the risk. And sure enough, it was. It was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. Do you know what?
I don't know. And they almost robbed Anderson Silva. They made it a split decision, I think.
Exactly. It was a split decision. And I promise you, I very, very rarely ever diss a fighter or anything like that, because you're in the ring, you're a tough boy anyway, and it's easy to be an armchair fan for anyone that hasn't ever been in the ring. But he is getting worse by the day. And he wasn't even great to begin with. So it's
great.
It's
he wasn't
bad.
Even good.
Well, he wasn't even good. He was like someone who's athletic walking into a gym and trying boxing for the first time. He was that, but he was without the athleticism.
Yeah. I'm telling you.
Honestly.
He was the epitome of his father's greatness, just continuing to market into the next generation. That's all it was. I mean, and he sold a lot. I mean, there were people in Mexico that were watching Chavez Jr. just because he's Chavez's son, and they'd order a ton of pay-per-views. Yeah. I remember the Canelo pay-per-view with Chavez Jr. I mean, you made it because people were going to buy it, and they did. I think he got over a million buys here in the United States. So, it was funny because we did a couple of Chavez Jr.'s fights when I was working over at Showtime. And I remember we'd go to Texas, and this guy would fill arenas.
Yeah,
exactly. I'd have to call the fight. This guy's terrible.
Has he ever even tried to make weight either? I feel like he's probably missed the weight more than he's ever made it.
Yeah, I feel like you've got to give him a contract at a lower weight on purpose. Yeah. So that when he shows up overweight, maybe he'll be on weight.
Exactly, 100%. Not great for boxing, but it happens. Well done, Anderson Silva. Also, Jermall Charlo had a tough night. Not a great performance by him. It was a strange opponent in terms of the style. He was square all night, turning southpaw orthodox.
I mean, Macias Montiel is an interesting guy because he, you look at him. I think he got stopped by Jaime Munguia a few years ago, but it's clearly a guy who's got some veteran experience now. Switch hitter. Fights in a bit of a negative way. I don't think that he was ever a threat to win the fight over Charlo, but he gave him a lot of trouble. Was able to land some clean shots on the inside. Had his left hand working from both stances very well. Going to the body very well. I mean, in the end, Jermall, you hold him to a different standard because he's that level of a fighter, and this is I wouldn't say it's criticism because he's a fighter of such a high standard that you hold him to a different level. So you have Jermall who probably won almost every round, and still, you're saying, oh, this is not a typical Jermall Charlo performance. He's a little bit subpar and whatnot. But I also think you got to give Macias Montiel some credit. I mean, this guy is a weird guy to fight. Yeah. And like I said, very fights out of both stances, gives you different looks, different fights out of both stances, like I said, and gives you different looks out of those both stances. And then he throws weird punches from, he gets close to you and he throws shots you don't expect. You get in close, you expect certain punches to be thrown. You get him far away, you expect certain punches to be thrown. He's inside it from the southpaw stance. He's on the inside and he's throwing left hooks to the body from the southpaw stance. You know what I'm saying? And he's doubling, tripling left hooks to the body, and then he's bringing it up to the head, and then he's bringing. It's just he's throwing awkward. He's an awkward fighter. Yeah. Gives you awkward looks, fights out of both stances, gives you awkward looks out of both stances, and throws awkward punches. It was, you give credit to Charlo for performing, but was one of those fights where, looking back now, he probably never had a chance, was never going to get a chance to look good against this guy. Styles make fights. But, of course, maybe it's going to, suck in Canelo for that fight. David Benavidez also was talking a lot. He wants to get the Charlo fight now too. He was making himself heard. So, suddenly it makes Charlo maybe puts him in the position to get some of these bigger fights that he's been craving.
There's also Golovkin. I saw him take a dig at Andrade. Who knows? There's options. Put it this way: as soon as you show any kind of vulnerability, people are going to start, having a look at you as a potential opponent.
And I'll say Andre looked vulnerable last fight. I wasn't thrilled with it wasn't your typical Andre performance that it's been. And, aging obviously affects you, especially when you're a guy like Andrade, who's not a fundamental fighter, who's a fighter who bases himself off his athleticism. You will kind of be done earlier than other fighters who have a better foundation to their boxing. Golovkin has always had a solid foundation. The Eastern Europeans have a solid boxing foundation. Fundamentally, they're very sound. Andrade, on the other hand, has always fought in a very athletic style. So I think he seems to be fading a little bit. Who knows? Maybe Golovkin is feeling that. We'll see.
Yeah, one of them. Also, I predicted it last week. I had a feeling we was finally going to get a good performance from Munguia, and we got a dominant one and a very good stoppage.
Yeah, he gets who did he get? He ended up getting I didn't end up seeing that fight. It was just too much. Yeah. There's too many fights on the weekend. He was supposed to fight Selecki, and he got Szeremeta. Szeremeta's the guy that pulled out on my friend Junior Yunin.
Yes.
He was supposed to fight Junior Yunin. He pulled out injured and then pops up on the same date against Szeremeta. Looking back, honestly, it was probably better for Szeremeta because the Szeremeta and Junior Yunin fight was going to be on the Teofimo Lopez card, which ended up imploding altogether. That card didn't even happen due to Teofimo testing positive for COVID. But so Szeremeta winds up against Munguia, gets a fight on that night, gets a payday on that night. But that's the only positives you can take out of it. Munguia has a solid performance.
Also, we can't skip it. Gabriel Rosado had pulled off a huge upset against a Uzbek prospect. Let me not butcher his name. Let me try and get it right. It's Bektemire Paulie Malignaggi. I hope. I'm very sorry if I got that wrong. But yeah, look, he scored a knockdown, and then Gabriel Rosado dug a big right hand out of nowhere.
And the thing is, this is why no matter how much experience you have, see the I'm not even gonna try to say his name, but the Uzbek, was it Uzbek? He's from Uzbekistan.
I think he is. Yeah, it's Uzbek.
Yeah, so the Uzbek fighter, he's one of those guys. They're moving him fast. Some of the Eastern Europeans have so much amateur experience. You move them so fast in the pros, and a lot of them they live up to it. You know, you got some of these guys winning world championships with less than 10 pro fights, and this guy was one of those guys who was moving into that position. Yeah. But the thing about it is, you still can't teach that experience, a professional experience, because Rosado knocked this guy out with a shot Rosado has always thrown. Rosado always throws that shot. You watch him his whole career. That's one of the things he does. Rosado doesn't really jab. He kind of pushes out that left hand. He looks to get in close. He can bang you around on the inside. He's physical. He's got some boxing style to him, but he doesn't jab. So it's almost an illusion that he has a boxing style. He's looking to hurt you, you know. Yeah. But amongst all that, one of the consistent shots he throws is that arcing right hand, you know? Yeah. And, again, when you have 7 pro fights, doesn't matter how much amateur experience you have, there's some things you're just not going to pick up on. Because if you watch any Rosado video, he's pretty much known for trying that shot a lot, you know? Yeah. And he got it. He landed it very, very solidly. He caught him when my man was trying to throw his own left hand, because it's a southpaw versus a right hander. He was trying to throw his own overhand left, and Rosado threw his shorter and got it right on the inside. And that was all she wrote. Big shot. That's a knockout of the year contender. And Rosado with a big win. Good marriage with Freddie Roach so far.
We also even saw a dislocated shoulder from, is it Tristan? I try and not look at the paper, but let me do it. Tristan Kalkarev. Have I pronounced that right, Paulie? I feel like.
Yeah.
I hope so. Guys. He dislocated his arm, but he obviously continued. He lost in the end, but he soldiered on till the end. Have you ever had to do you know what it reminded me of, Paulie? I'm not sure if you ever saw Danny Williams, but he fought like so many rounds, a British fighter with a dislocated shoulder.
Dislocated shoulder. Yeah,
yes, and he pulled it out of the bag. He got a knockout.
Yeah, I've seen that highlight where he had one arm or something, and he threw a big shot and got the guy out of there, right? Yeah, I've seen that highlight. Also reminds me of George Groves with Eubank, the last couple of rounds,
But at least with Groves, did that happen in the 11? That might have happened in the 12th. Yeah. I think it happened in the last round. And he just kind of just had enough about him to kind of he didn't really fight with it. Yeah, but he just spoiled.
I mean, it's a difficult injury, obviously, because one thing about hurting your hand, you can kind of cover up. I remember I used to hurt my right hand. I couldn't throw it, right, but I would use it for defense. I could parry, I could catch. Sometimes it would hurt when I would catch a hook when I would broke my hand, but at least like you kind of had some use for it. You dislocate your shoulder, you can't even lift it. So it's hard to even catch punches. So it's a difficult. It's an even more difficult proposition to deal with.
And then you don't know if you should be going southpaw and use it as your backhand and stay safe of that. And then it's literally just a nightmare. Let's go into what is coming up this week. We have Lopez and Kamil Jr. Before we go on to that didn't happen.
It didn't happen,
because of COVID. Not ideal. That's probably the one I wanted to watch out of all of those fights we've just named. But it happens. And have you ever had to pull out very last minute due to anything?
Yeah, I had a fight canceled on me later in my career. I got cut in the gym about 10 days before the fight. One of my last sparring sessions, I was going to fight Danny O'Connor on the Amir Khan versus Chris Algieri card. It was going to be the co-main event. And, I ended up having to pull out. I got cut in the gym. I got cut in a sparring session. That was really the only time that ever happened. Ironically, O'Connor wound up fighting Gabriel Bracero a couple of fights later and getting beat, and then I ended up fighting Bracero instead a couple of fights later after that too. But I remember I lost it was a big TV opportunity because it was national TV. It was a co-feature of a big fight, and I was kind of angry about it. So instead, I remember I came to London and I worked the Kell Brook fight. I think he fought Frankie Gavin.
Yes, good fight that. Good fight. That was when Kell Brook was proper in his prime there. Right. We have had this week the longest stare down in boxing history. It has to be just in history. No one's ever done. It was 5 minutes, 50 seconds.
Yeah, this is I think Deontay Wilder is psyching himself out completely. You say all these things, you've got to say them in the presence of your opponent. You've got to do that. You've got to do that. I think that's the most important thing. It's after you've been saying all these things, now that you're because I'm telling you from personal experience, it feels differently when your opponent is there. If you have any kind of intimidation, you're gonna hesitate. You may not say anything. So if you're gonna talk like a bad man on all these other interviews, now when you're in the presence of the guy that you're supposed to do this to, you need to say it with your chest out. You know what I'm saying? You need to have that. You need to have that emphatic, and you need to say it emphatically like that with that enthusiasm. So you show that you mean business. You can't show up and just have an excuse. Oh, I'm not gonna talk now. So for me, that was an L for Wilder on the press conference. But the stare down reminded me of something Fury had said about Vladimir Klitschko years before he fought Vladimir Klitschko.
It did the same thing to me. Right? I know exactly what you're gonna say.
Terrific. Yeah. So we're on the same page then. When they used to go into the Russian, basically, I've done this too. I make weight in Russian bathhouses a lot. In Brooklyn, I will go to. Now I think they all closed due to COVID. But I used to go to Russian bathhouses, and they had these saunas and steam rooms and everything. And when I had to make weight, I think at the end of my workout weeks, I would go there and try to kind of relax for the day, And they get hot. They get really, really hot, And sometimes, you just feel like you're suffocating in there. But if you're in shape and you can take it if you mentally can withstand it, a regular person may not be. But, if you're in shape, your body's conditioned for it, And I remember Fury talking about that he was in the bathhouse with Klitschko and all the other fighters were leaving. And Fury said, no, I'm going to outlast them in here. Because it becomes a mental battle, Yeah. So you're fighting with yourself. And then all of a sudden they were kind of just looking at each other. And he's like, nah, he's not going to get me out of here, And they were in there for about 45 minutes, which I can't even believe, man. I mean, I've been in these hot rooms. You feel like you're cooking in there. You feel like you're cooking. Like they just put oil on you. You become an edible food.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So Klitschko got out of there and he felt like, you know what, I got one win over him, and it was the same thing when that stand down happened. I was like, you know what, I know Fury's not gonna move now. Now they're gonna be there till tomorrow morning. Fury would have stayed there till tomorrow morning. It wasn't gonna matter, So Deontay now is forced to take another L unless he wants to stay there till tomorrow morning as well. But, they probably both got flights to catch. Deontay's probably thinking more rationally. Like, I got a flight to catch. I got to go back to camp, Fury would have missed his flight. Fury wouldn't have cared, So you put yourself in a position where Fury gets another one on you. By doing that, you put yourself in the position because you should have just done the stare down and walked away, and that's it. Instead, you by doing that 5-minute stare down, now you put yourself in a position where psychologically, if you now walk away, you've made him feel psychologically superior to you again.
Of course.
And sure enough, you did that. Once that stare down passed about 20 seconds, that's it. You gotta leave. Yeah. You gotta leave. Otherwise, you gotta be willing to stay there all night because that's how it was gonna be. And so. He took an L on there too, so we'll see.
What do you make about him? Staying silent and allowing.
What I make of it is what I said before, Dan. I think that if you talk the way you've been talking all this time, you've now got to say that with your chest out. You gotta in the presence of your opponent is when it's more important. It's not as important to say it on the YouTuber interview or on the internet reporter when you're talking to him. You're in the presence of this guy. Now you've got to look him in his eye, or you've got to say it. You've got to voice it and know he's listening to you, and you've got to say it with the same enthusiasm because you've got to let it hit home to him that this you mean it. If you don't, he's gonna feel like, now I'm in your presence. Now you're intimidated. You're gonna give him that mental edge. You're gonna say, I got you now. You're intimidated. You were talking like a bad man before, but now I'm in the room, and all of a sudden you're quiet as a mouse. Do
you think he's doing that because he's just doing whatever he wants at that moment in time, or do you think there's a PR team somewhere in the background giving him advice? There's
definitely no PR team. No,
I've seen some poor ones. I've seen some. I
think there's a lot of guys who have PR teams. I don't think Deontay is looking like he's listening to any PR team. Deontay doesn't even listen to his own team. His team listens to him. It's the other way. And if you don't listen to him, you get fired. You know what I mean? It's like you got to be a yes man if you're in Deontay's camp. It's become so obvious. It's to that point. And we'll see. We'll see what I mean. Listen, if he gets a win, he kind of helps himself out in the way that he can look like he wasn't so insane. But if this guy loses, he's gonna fall. The wheels are gonna fall off the wagon on this guy because this guy, the wheels fell off the wagon already. If this guy loses, he's gonna wind up in his own insane asylum. He's gonna really need help, because he's gonna mentally wind up in a place in a not very good place. Even though he shouldn't be because he's got enough money, he can take care of his family, he can take care of his loved ones. It shouldn't be the be all end all. But because he's become so obsessed with this ridiculousness, if he goes and gets knocked out again, if he goes and gets run over like Fury's predicting, this guy's gonna wind up in an insane asylum that not even his own all the money that he has can buy him out of. It's crazy.
He's in a position now where he's already built a rod for his own back, because if he doesn't get the win, it is over. It doesn't even really matter the fashion because of all the. He didn't take his last defeat very well, and now it means that if you don't win,
the problem, Dan, is if there is another locomotive 18-wheeler running you over like running over a human being, which Fury predicts, Malik Scott has been hired to not stop the fight. He's been hired to not stop the fight. So Mark Vreeland was there to get you out of that life and death situation. You're going to have to go out on your back. You're going to wind up on your back. There's no other way to do it. Because even the referee, if the referee stops Deontay Wilder on his feet, the referee is going to get the brunt of Deontay Wilder's wrath for the rest of Deontay's life. You know what I'm saying? So no referee wants to deal with that. What referee wants to deal with that? So he's going to end up letting him get put out on his back. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it is.
Do you know what? Maybe Deontay Wilder should just remain silent for the rest of the press tour, because when you see how good Fury is with words, he said an 18-wheeler. It's just, he's so
running
good.
over a human being. I mean, that was man.
Also,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You've been talking all this stuff. Now you show up and now you don't want to talk. And this guy's telling you he's going to run you over like an 18-wheeler. You've got to talk. You've been talking too much. If you hadn't talked, then okay, you can let him talk. But all you've been doing is talking. So now you show up, you're not talking, while this guy's telling you he's going to run you over like an 18-wheeler. You've now got to talk because you talked too much before. And the fact that you didn't, again, you took an L in all the presser. You took an L in the stare down. You took an L in the last fight. You probably took an L in the first fight, but they gave you a draw.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. That's it.
Well,
I'll be very surprised. I'll be very surprised if this ends well for Deontay Wilder. I think he's just wrapping himself more and more into this spider web of insanity.
Also, there are rumors that Oscar De La Hoya is going to call out Floyd Mayweather after his next fight. Do you prefer... Look, it feels like this show is becoming more of a comedy show. every week.
Well, speaking of show, this is like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. The show goes on. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. Floyd Mayweather's not leaving. Oscar De La Hoya is not leaving. Nobody's leaving.
Do we prefer to see retired fighters return and fight each other, especially if they're from the same era? If we are stuck between a rock and a hard place and we're having to work out what is the lesser of the two evils, do we prefer that to YouTube fights?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't see the what is it called? What's the word I'm looking for? The attraction. You know, I can see it here and there. I don't see the attraction of it becoming a normal thing. Like, even with me, I'm starting to get a lot of pressure and a lot of press to beat up on this idiot YouTuber kid, Corey B. But what do you think? Like, I would come here and fight him, and then I just start a whole tour and just start fighting a retirement tour? Who wants to do that, bro? We do this. We make the sacrifices so that when we retire, we can chill. We can chill. Who wants to keep training? I don't know. To me, it defeats all logic. It defeats all logic. Not to mention, no matter what level you're getting hit on, you're still getting hit. You're not supposed to get hit as you get older, man. You're supposed to be able to, rest on your laurels and enjoy the fruits of your labor. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But then again, I don't know if they like each other enough to let each other make money anyway. So so we'll see.
Well, you know what? That's the only thing that they seem to love more than other things is the money. And you know what? Whilst I hate what Floyd is doing, I understand that it's very difficult to just leave $100 million on the table. I get that much. Yeah, there's never a problem I've had to do. Well,
I agree with you, but here's the thing. It's one thing to fight a YouTuber. Even a retired Oscar De La Hoya is way better than a YouTuber. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got, you're both older. You've got a legitimate fight on your hands. You've got a legitimate fight between retired champions, but they're gonna go at it. I remember there was talk of Miguel Cotto and Juan Marquez doing an exhibition. Bro, if those guys fought, that was gonna be a fight. You know what I'm saying? No matter what, because those guys know how to fight. Even at their age. So it's one thing to do it against retired champions against retired champion. It's another thing to do it against a YouTuber where it's a walk in the park, basically, as much as you want to have a walk in the park. Exactly. Like for me, if I go at Corey B, I'm just gonna fight like Roy Jones and just hit him with left hooks constantly. I'm just gonna double, triple, quadruple them constantly. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be just a joke. I might do like Macias and start dropping them to the body too, like a bunch of repeat left hooks to the body as well. But when it comes to fighting an ex-champion, I mean, bro, you gotta do a legitimate training camp. You gotta do like a legitimate. You can't train like Great White Hype. You know what I'm saying? Like Damon Wayans and Great White Hype. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you've seen that movie, but anybody who hasn't seen it, check it out. You know what I'm talking about. But you can't train like that. You gotta legitimately train. So I don't know. I mean, I think they would entertain, but I don't know if it should be the norm. You know what I'm saying? Yes. While it's entertaining, I don't know if it should become the norm.
All right, let's put one in the bin. Which one are we putting in the bin? YouTube fights or retired fighters, retired world champions?
Nah, YouTube fighters got to go in the bin.
They got to go.
YouTube fighters, YouTube fighters. Retired fighters, they're still in the lore. They're still champions. You see what they got. They still got some of their skill. YouTube fighters got to go in the bin. YouTube fighters got to go in the bin.
All right, prediction time. We have Lomachenko making his return. He's fighting Nakatini. It's still at 135, and there's still a big height difference. Should he even be staying at 135?
I don't think he should. But Lomachenko is a hungry guy who is still determined. Guys like this, I think they put themselves at risk at a certain point. This is the kind of guy who remains so hungry, remains so thirsty for greatness, and he'll never be appreciated for really how great he is. I think Lomachenko is an amazing fighter. He'll never be appreciated for it. And so I think he'll always be chasing that. Yeah. And that's why there has to come a certain point where you're happy with yourself. Because if you're trying to make others happy, you're trying to satisfy the critics, you're going to put yourself more and more in danger. Lomachenko is not a spring chicken. I think he's 32, maybe even 33. So he doesn't, at that weight, you don't have a lot of years left. I think, I wouldn't be shocked if he dominates Nakatani. Stylistically, I wouldn't be shocked, even though Nakatani's a big guy, tall guy. But at the same time, where do you go? Where do you go? You know what I mean? I feel like his best weight is still at smaller weight classes. I feel like you can go that way. But if you go to smaller weight classes, who do you fight? You're not going to get Gervonta Davis. They're not going to fight you. You probably could ask for Devin Haney, since Haney has pretended he's wanted to fight you for 2 years, but you're probably not going to get that fight either. I I don't know. I mean, where does he go? You know, at 130 pounds, maybe there's some young stars coming up, but you know, even if there's young stars coming up, I mean, is it worth to take the time and effort to fight them? Oscar Valdez is at 130. He's with Top Rank. I think Lomachenko washes Oscar Valdez, though, because stylistically, he's just, you know, Valdez is a come-forward, aggressive guy, and Lomachenko eats those guys up, you know? This is not to say he should retire, because obviously he doesn't want to, and he's good, and he's I feel like he's a little bit stuck in a rut as to what to chase.
It feels like the only division he can actually prove something in is 135, but it's obviously the most high risk division.
Yeah, but he can prove to who? To the people who have unrealistic expectations, you know, like, because he's not a lightweight. He's not a lightweight. You're gonna wind up where you gonna wind up? You're gonna wind up rematching Lopez. You're gonna wind up rematching Lopez. Is that where you're gonna? If Lopez stays at lightweight, if Lopez even stays at lightweight, you know, and what is that gonna? That's gonna put you in danger. You might make another competitive fight. You might even win. Who knows? You might even win. But you're risking so much. You're risking so much, and Lopez is legitimately dangerous, legitimately bigger, and you don't even know if you're gonna get that fight. Lopez may go up to 140 pounds. He may go fight Josh Taylor.
We've also got Gervonta Davis against Barrios, which is probably a fight that most people are gonna expect Tank to win, but it's still another potential banana skin.
Yeah, Mario Barrios is the kind of guy who I think people haven't seen a lot of if you're outside the United States. But Barrios can fight. Barrios can fight. It reminds me in some ways like a little bit like my Cotto fight, where some people that knew boxing knew I could fight, but it was still like a step up. You know, because everybody already knew the champion was solid. You know, everybody knew the champion as a whole, as the image of the champion as a killer, so to speak. And when I came and fought Cotto, boxing people knew I was good, but, you know, didn't mean they were picking me to win, but they were like, you know, Paulie's not bad. But the casuals were like, you know, thinking like this is going to be a run this guy over type of thing. Yeah. I see this fight as kind of the same. Boxing people know Mario Barrios can fight. Yeah. But a lot of other casuals, you know, like the rap radio stations who just follow certain fighters when they have Gervonta Davis on, they're not going to know who Mario Barrios is when they're talking about this fight. They're just going to talk about Gervonta Davis, right? So I think, you know, this is a potential banana skin in that Mario can fight and Mario can, you know, kind of expose some flaws. I think Gervonta's going to have to come correct in this fight, you know, and that's not to say he won't. But in some fights, he hasn't come correct. In some fights, you can clearly see he wasn't trained correctly. He wasn't sharp. He wasn't whatever. I think if you don't come correct with Barrios, you risk losing the fight. So let's see. It's a legitimate, respectable opponent this time around for Gervonta Davis, and I don't think that's happened in a while.
Also, there's a bit of a height difference there. So, if Gervonta can negotiate range and do all of that, is that what you're looking for that you haven't seen yet from him? I'm thinking best case scenario for Tank, he has a dominant performance. Does that change anything in your mind?
Yeah, because stylistically, you just hit it right on the head, Dan. You know, you've got to close the gap, and you've got to, you know, that's one thing about guys like Gervonta. It was also a problem with Broner, and it's a question about Gervonta. You got the fast hands, you got the nice combinations, but do you have the foot speed to close the gap when it needs to be closed against guys who like to fight you at a longer range than you prefer? You know, do you have that foot speed? So this fight could prove it to us. You know, this fight could show us about that, because Leo Santa Cruz was tall. Leo Santa Cruz is not only smaller than Gervonta, he also is a tall guy who likes to fight inside. So. He was a perfect foil for Gervonta Davis, you know, and his countless weapons. This guy is a maneuverable guy, you know. He's got maneuverability, he's got boxing skills, and he's not a weak puncher himself. So, and he's hungry. He's hungry. Mario Barrios this is his big fight. This is his big chance. He's here to make a name for himself. So we'll see.
Right, that is all we have time for this week. As always, thank you to the Turmeric Co. for sponsoring this episode. I think that's it, Paulie. I feel like that's it for us. And let's go and have some turmeric.
That's it. Yeah, I'm gonna have some turmeric right now. So the viewers at home. So not only do we sponsor them, but we also actually drink this stuff.
We have them.
This
is
good for you.
Of course. Look, he's having it right there. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Send us videos of your training, fantasy fights, all of that, and we'll see you next week. Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxing podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.
This episode is sponsored by the Turmeric Co. The Turmeric Co. creates great tasting turmeric shots that harness the power of natural ingredients to support individuals on their wellness journey, offering anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, energy and immunity booster benefits.